Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari is a sweeping exploration of the history of our species, Homo sapiens, tracing our journey from insignificant apes wandering the African savanna to the dominant force shaping the planet today. Harari's narrative is both captivating and thought-provoking, inviting readers to rethink familiar stories about humanity's progress and question what it means to be human in a rapidly changing world. Harari divides human history into several major revolutions that fundamentally altered the way our species lives, thinks, and organizes society. Each revolution, whether cognitive, agricultural, unifying, or scientific, represents a radical break with the past, a leap that reshaped human culture, social structures, and relationships with the environment. Together, these revolutions form the backbone of Harari's thesis that Homo sapiens' success is due largely to our unique capacity for creating shared myths and beliefs that enable large-scale cooperation. The book begins roughly 70,000 years ago with the cognitive revolution, when Homo sapiens developed new ways of thinking and communicating, enabling us to outsmart rival species and organize complex societies. This ability to invent and spread myths, whether religions, nations, or economic systems, set humans apart from every other organism on Earth. Then came the agricultural revolution, around 12,000 years ago, a transformation from nomadic hunter-gatherers to sedentary farmers that drastically changed human diets, work, social hierarchies, and the environment. Despite its many challenges and downsides, agriculture enabled the rise of cities, kingdoms, and empires. Following this, Harari explores the unification of humankind, describing how trade, empires, and universal religions gradually connected disparate human groups, creating a more unified world with shared cultural, political, and economic systems. Finally, the scientific revolution, beginning about 500 years ago, unlocked the power of knowledge and experimentation, propelling technological advances that continue to accelerate and shape modern life. Harari stresses that science's success stems from embracing uncertainty and ignorance, acknowledging what we don't know, and using that as fuel to discover more. Throughout Sapiens, Harari also contemplates the ethical and philosophical dilemmas posed by these revolutions. What responsibilities do humans have to each other and the planet? How do myths shape our identities and politics? What might the future hold as we increasingly integrate technology into our biology and societies? This summary will delve into each of these revolutions and themes in detail, unpacking Harari's insights and reflecting on their implications for understanding humanity's past and future. The Cognitive Revolution. The Cognitive Revolution is the first major turning point in Sapiens, and arguably the most crucial for setting Homo sapiens apart from other species. About 70,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened in the brains of our ancestors, a qualitative leap in cognitive ability that allowed for complex language, abstract thinking, and the creation of shared myths. Harari calls this a revolution because it fundamentally changed how humans related to each other and the world around them. Before this revolution, several human species, Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and the tiny Homo floresiensis, roamed the Earth, each adapted to their environments but limited by their cognitive capacities. Homo sapiens was just another species, one of many similar primates competing for survival. Yet, after the cognitive revolution, Homo sapiens gained the ability to cooperate flexibly in large groups, an advantage that other species could not match. At the heart of this revolution was the emergence of language, but not just any language. Humans began to develop a sophisticated system of communication that allowed them to talk about things that didn't physically exist, fictional realities. This included everything from gossiping about who was trustworthy in the tribe to creating complex social structures based on shared beliefs. This ability to share and believe in common myths enabled large-scale cooperation. Ants cooperate instinctively in small groups. Wolves coordinate in packs. But only humans can organize thousands or millions of strangers around ideas like nations, religions, and corporations, concepts that exist purely in our collective imagination. For instance, money is just paper or digital numbers we all agree have value. Nations are lines drawn on maps, but millions live and die for them. Corporations are legal entities created by law, but they wield real power. This shared belief in imagined realities allowed Homo sapiens to outcompete rival species and spread rapidly across the globe. It also laid the foundation for everything from trade networks to legal systems to religions. The cognitive revolution, Harari argued, the agricultural revolution, the greatest fraud in history? After tens of thousands of years living as hunter-gatherers, around 12,000 years ago, human societies underwent another radical transformation known as the agricultural revolution. This shift marked humanity's transition from nomadic lifestyles, dependent on hunting wild animals and gathering plants, to settled farming communities. Harari calls this the greatest fraud in history because, despite common assumptions, farming didn't necessarily make life easier or better for individuals, yet it changed everything on a global scale. Why did humans adopt farming? The answers are complex, involving climate change at the end of the last ice age, population pressures, and gradual experimentation with domestication. But once farming took hold, it spread rapidly across continents, transforming societies in fundamental ways. At first glance, agriculture seems like a massive improvement. Farming enabled people to produce surplus food, supporting larger populations and leading to the rise of villages, towns, and eventually cities. This surplus laid the foundation for complex social hierarchies, labor specialization, and technological innovation. However, Harari challenges the romanticized view of farming. He points out that early farmers worked much harder than hunter-gatherers, spending long hours tending crops and livestock, and had less varied diets, often dominated by starchy grains like wheat and rice. This led to nutritional deficiencies and increased susceptibility to disease. Moreover, farming tied humans to specific plots of land, making nomadic lifestyles impossible and fostering property ownership concepts. This sedentism led to the rise of social inequality, with some people accumulating wealth and power, and others becoming laborers or slaves. Harari's provocative argument is that wheat domesticated humans as much as humans domesticated wheat. The cultivation of grains demanded constant care, forcing humans into routines of hard work, dependence, and eventually submission to emerging authorities like kings and priests who controlled the surplus food and land. Farming also created new societal challenges: taxes, warfare over fertile land, population booms, and the spread of epidemics in denser settlements. Unlike hunter-gatherer bands that had little contact and lower disease transmission, agricultural villages were hotspots for plagues. The agricultural revolution also transformed human relationships with the environment. Large-scale farming led to deforestation, soil depletion, and changes in biodiversity that still affect ecosystems today. Despite these drawbacks, the agricultural revolution was a tipping point that enabled humanity to grow beyond the limits of small tribal groups. It was the foundation for civilization, allowing the development of writing, laws, cities, and empires. In essence, while farming made life harder for many individuals, it allowed the human species as a whole to flourish, multiply, and shape the planet on a massive scale. The unification of humankind. Myths that bind following the agricultural revolution, human societies grew larger and more complex. Small villages gave way to sprawling cities, and disparate tribes merged into kingdoms and empires. Harari describes this phase as the unification of humankind, where previously isolated groups began to connect through trade, conquest, religion, and shared ideologies, knitting the world into an increasingly unified cultural and political fabric. One of the key drivers of this unification was the creation and spread of shared myths that transcended local loyalties and bound larger populations together. These myths took various forms: religions, political ideologies, legal systems, and economic networks, and they enabled cooperation among strangers on scales previously unimaginable. Harari identifies three powerful forces that glued humanity together during this period. A. Money. The ultimate shared hallucination, money, is a perfect example of a collective fiction. It has no inherent value, usually just paper notes, metal coins, or digital entries, but it works because everyone agrees to believe in it. This belief allows humans to trade goods and services with people they don't know personally, greatly expanding economic interactions. Historically, money evolved from tangible commodities like barley in Mesopotamia or shells in other cultures into the abstract systems we use today. Even modern cryptocurrencies, which exist purely as lines of computer code, rely entirely on collective trust to function. This shared belief in money enabled the creation of vast trade networks, cities, and empires by linking economies across great distances and cultures. Empires, the original cultural blenders. Empires are political entities that rule over vast territories and diverse populations. Unlike tribes or small kingdoms, empires unite many ethnicities, languages, and religions under one government. This blending often led to cultural exchange, innovation, and the spread of ideas. Examples include the Roman Empire, which spread Latin and legal systems across Europe, the Mongol Empire, which connected East and West through the Silk Road, and the British Empire, which influenced politics, language, and culture worldwide. Harari points out that empires often imposed peace, sometimes called the Pax Romana or Pax Britannica, which allowed trade and ideas to flourish. However, empires also relied on conquest, slavery, and exploitation, showing the dark side of unification. An interesting detail Harari shares is how empires influence language. The English word orange comes from Sanskrit through Arabic and Old French, illustrating the deep cultural mixing that empires facilitated. See religion. The first universal brand's religion became a major unifying force as well. While early human beliefs were localized and tribal, major religions like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam offered universal codes and promises to all people, regardless of tribe or ethnicity. These religions established moral frameworks and social norms, helping to maintain order in vast, diverse societies. They created a sense of shared identity and purpose that transcended local allegiances. However, Harari also notes the irony that many of these religions preached peace, but often spread through violent means like crusades, jihads, and colonial conquests. The unification of humankind fundamentally shaped the political, cultural, and economic landscape we live in today. It connected people across continents, fostered cooperation at unprecedented scales, and laid the groundwork for the modern globalized world. The scientific revolution. Knowledge is power. After millennia of agricultural societies, empires, and religious systems, something radically new began around 500 years ago. The scientific revolution. This period marks the transition from relying on traditional authority and religious dogma to basing knowledge on observation, experimentation, and mathematics. Harari argues that this revolution was unlike anything before it, not just another change, but the beginning of an entirely new way of thinking. For most of human history, people believed that everything important was already known, revealed by gods or ancient sages. Progress, in the modern sense, was not expected. But beginning in the 16th century, thinkers started to admit a simple but profound truth. We don't know everything. This humble admission became the foundation of modern science. Scientists began asking questions, testing ideas, and updating their beliefs based on evidence, not tradition. The result was an explosion of knowledge that would eventually reshape every aspect of human life. One of the most important ideas that emerged from this shift was that knowledge equals power. Instead of studying the universe to better understand God's creation, as in medieval theology, scientists and rulers realized that studying nature could help control it, curing disease, building machines, improving agriculture, and more. This created a feedback loop between science, technology, and empire. The marriage of science and empire. Harari highlights a crucial dynamic. European imperialism and scientific exploration went hand in hand. When European powers like Britain, Spain, and France sent explorers across the world, they didn't just conquer lands. They also sent botanists, cartographers, doctors, and linguists to study the places they colonized. Knowledge gained through science helped empires grow stronger, while empires funded more scientific exploration. For example, accurate maps and navigational tools allowed fleets to dominate global trade routes. Understanding tropical diseases helped Europeans survive in colonies. Botanical research helped exploit new cash crops. This collaboration between science and empire was not always benevolent. It often meant that science served power, used to justify racial hierarchies, slavery, and exploitation under the banner of progress or civilizing missions. The Industrial Revolution. Science powers the machines. The next major leap came with the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries. Fueled by scientific discoveries, humans developed engines, factories, trains, and machines that dramatically increased productivity. Whereas pre-industrial economies were limited by the muscle power of humans and animals, industrial societies harnessed fossil fuels like coal and oil. This led to mass production, urbanization, and massive population growth. One striking consequence: humans gained the ability to reshape the planet like never before. Cities expanded, forests were cleared, and pollution levels rose. Humanity began to alter the climate unintentionally at first, leading to today's environmental crises. The Industrial Revolution also changed the nature of work. In agricultural societies, most people were peasants or farmers. In industrial societies, many became factory workers, often in poor conditions. Over time, labor reforms, education, and rising wealth improved lives for many, but inequality remained and still does. Capitalism, faith in growth. Parallel to the scientific and industrial revolutions, Harari explores the rise of capitalism, the dominant economic system of our time. Capitalism is based on a simple idea: economic growth is good, and endless growth is possible. This belief in perpetual growth is relatively new. In the past, people assumed economies were limited and mostly static. But capitalism introduced a new dynamic. If you reinvest profits instead of hoarding wealth, the economy can expand, creating more jobs and goods. Harari emphasizes the psychological shift that made this possible. People began to trust the future. They believed that tomorrow would be richer, so it made sense to invest, borrow, and build. This is the foundation of modern banking, stock markets, and venture capital. Credit, once seen as dangerous or immoral, became the engine of innovation. Today, every major economy runs on loans, investments, and the promise of future returns. But capitalism also comes with trade-offs. It can lead to exploitation of workers, environmental destruction, and consumerism. Harari suggests that capitalism is a religion in disguise. It shapes our values, our time, and our goals, whether we realize it or not. The human cost. Are we happier? As Harari nears the end of Sapiens, he asks a provocative question. Has all this progress made us happier? After all, we've gone from foraging in forests to flying in jets and browsing the internet. Surely that should mean we're better off. But the answer isn't so clear. From an evolutionary perspective, Homo sapiens have become the dominant species on Earth. We've reshaped the biosphere, extended our lifespans, and connected the globe. But individual happiness hasn't necessarily kept pace. In fact, ancient foragers may have had more satisfying lives in some ways. They had more leisure time, closer social bonds, and lived in harmony with their environment. Modern humans often feel anxious, isolated, and overwhelmed by constant change. Harari argues that the pursuit of happiness is deeply tied to biology, not just wealth or technology. Our minds are wired by evolution to compare ourselves to others and to adapt quickly to new comforts. So even as material conditions improve, satisfaction doesn't always follow. Think of it this way. A person with access to modern healthcare, entertainment, and transportation might still feel unhappy if their neighbor has more. The brain adjusts, and what once felt like luxury becomes the new normal. The future of sapiens, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence. Finally, Harari looks to the future and asks, what happens when science and technology begin to change not just our environment, but humanity itself? We are entering an era of biotechnology and artificial intelligence, tools that may allow us to redesign life. Genetic engineering could eliminate diseases, increase intelligence, or even extend life indefinitely. AI could outperform humans in many tasks, challenging our place in the workforce and society. This raises enormous ethical and philosophical questions. If we can edit our genes, who decides what is normal or desirable? If machines become smarter than us, what will be our role? Will a new kind of human emerge, one enhanced by tech or even merged with it? Harari warns that Homo sapiens may be nearing the end of its story. The same creative forces that gave us power over nature could eventually make us obsolete, or something entirely new. Homo Deus, the end of Homo sapiens? As Sapiens draws to a close, Harari challenges us with one of the boldest ideas in the book. Homo sapiens is no longer the end of the story. In fact, we may be on the verge of being replaced or transforming into something entirely different. Throughout the last 70,000 years, humans have evolved from insignificant foragers to the rulers of the planet. We've built cities, empires, religions, ideologies, and now technologies that give us godlike powers. We can manipulate genes, alter ecosystems, and even create artificial intelligence. But Harari argues that our scientific and technological power is evolving faster than our wisdom, ethics, or understanding of ourselves. This creates a dangerous gap between what we can do and what we should do. He poses 3 key questions for the future of humanity. 1. Can we continue to keep humanity and technology aligned? 2. What do we want to become? 3. What will happen to humans once we start creating beings more intelligent or more capable than us, be they genetically enhanced humans or machines? These questions form the foundation for Harari's next book, Homo Deus. But Sapiens leaves us with a stark realization: we may soon lose control over our own future. The Human Story Reconsidered. One of the central themes of Sapiens is that human history is not a linear march toward progress, but a complex, often messy, and unpredictable process. Harari dismantles many of the comforting myths we tell ourselves. The agricultural revolution was not necessarily an improvement. It led to worse health, more labor, and inequality. Religions and ideologies helped unify people, but often at the cost of freedom and truth. Capitalism and science brought prosperity and knowledge, but also created instability and ecological destruction. Modern humans have more power than ever, but not necessarily more wisdom or happiness. Harari's approach is strikingly non-romantic. He refuses to paint a rosy picture of human history and instead urges us to confront hard truths. This includes recognizing how much of our world is built on shared myths, money, nations, religions, and how fragile these constructs really are. In doing so, he gives readers a toolkit to question assumptions about their lives, their societies, and their values. Are we any happier? Returning to the question of happiness, Harari concludes that we don't fully understand what happiness is or how to achieve it. While economic growth and technological innovation have improved material conditions, they haven't guaranteed satisfaction. He emphasizes 2 points. 1, happiness depends more on subjective expectations and social comparison than objective conditions. A modern person with internet, healthcare, and abundant food might still feel unhappy compared to others. A medieval peasant, by contrast, might have been content if their expectations were modest and aligned with their worldview. 2, biology plays a major role. Our brains evolved to ensure survival, not happiness. They are easily dissatisfied, always chasing more. This biological treadmill keeps us moving, but rarely fulfilled. Some philosophies, like Buddhism, understood this long ago. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from craving and that inner peace comes from detaching from these desires. Harari suggests this ancient insight may be more relevant than ever. The final reflection: what do we want to become? In the last pages of Sapiens, Harari leaves readers with a powerful challenge. Now that humans have the ability to reshape life, species, and even consciousness, we must ask, what do we want to become? For centuries, we were preoccupied with surviving and expanding our power. Now that we've largely succeeded, a deeper question remains. What should we do with that power? Do we use it to create more wealth, more control, and more consumption? Or can we turn it inward to understand our minds, reduce suffering, and live more meaningful lives? Harari offers no final answers, but insists the question is urgent. The fate of our species, and perhaps of life itself, depends on how we choose to respond. Key takeaways from Sapiens. Human history is shaped by shared myths. Money, religion, nations, and ideologies are all human-made constructs. The agricultural revolution made societies more complex but brought new suffering and inequality. Empires, religions, and capitalism unified large populations, but often at moral or human cost. Modern science and capitalism drove progress, but also created environmental and existential threats. Humans may soon transcend biology, raising questions about identity, ethics, and control. Happiness has not increased proportionally with power, and understanding it may require revisiting ancient insights. Final thought. Sapiens is not just a history book, it's a mirror. It invites readers to step back from their personal lives and see the broader picture of what it means to be human. It's both humbling and provocative. By the end, Harari has taken us from the dawn of cognition to the brink of post-humanity and left us with a simple but profound challenge. We are more powerful than ever, but do we know what we're doing? Let me know if you'd like a PDF or printable version of all parts, a summary of Harari's next book, Homo Deus, a visual mind map or timeline of key events from Sapiens. I'm happy to help.